Yeah, hello and good afternoon, everybody. This is Lalit Raja from CLO Technologies, and I drive the sales function, and I'm responsible for the GTM at CLO. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming you all to this webinar, which CLO Technologies is jointly conducting with one of our strategic technology partners, Messrs. Blue Bricks Group of Companies. I thank all of you profusely to take out time from your busy schedules to join this webinar. We highly appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, CLO Technologies is a 6-year young organization and was incepted as a trusted value-added distributor for some very niche leading technology vendors in the areas of IT security, cybersecurity, and cloud security. Headquartered in India, our business operations cover India and also EMEA as a theater. Being completely customer-centric and partner-centric in the present era of the digital marketplace, that has been our DNA. And by offering pre- and post-sales services, as well as professional advisory services to complement our vendor partner solutions, is where CLO brings in the value proposition to all our esteemed clients and partners. Today, we take pride in the fact that CLO Technologies has established itself as a credible and a dominant player in the IT cybersecurity world. Ladies and gentlemen, this endorsement comes from our esteemed clients and trusted partners who have time and again stood by us. Today, we are truly delighted and proud of our esteemed partnership with a stellar leader in the innovation of cybersecurity, automation, transformation, and digital payments, that is Blue Bricks Group of Companies. Blue Bricks has been at the forefront of identity-based digital information, security, and payment market for nearly 8 years now. Their identity-based data security solutions secure governments, enterprises, and financial institutions in more than 50+ organizations spanning 10 countries, and they have protected about 1 million+ users with zero fraud using their security products. Proven across the world, their software platforms are in the domain of multi-factor authentication, web and mobile payment, big data analytics, and its security. IT automation, especially in information security, digitization as APIs, e-commerce enablement, etc., are critical to your organization's success, particularly in business to business and government to business. Blue Bricks takes pride in solving customers' digital transformation challenges and working with them closely as partners, but not just vendors, to solve all their problems and learn from each problem to make their solutions better for future clients. So, respected clients and partners, without further ado, I take this opportunity of flagging off this webinar we, CLO and Blue Bricks Group of Companies are hosting, and we earnestly submit and urge all of you to take advantage and benefit of this exciting proposition and allow us an opportunity to be of service to you. It is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you the team from Messrs. Blue Bricks Group of Companies with us today. We have Mr. Vikram Sareen, who is the co-founder and chief architect of Blue Bricks Group of Companies. Vikram possesses 21 years of rich cybersecurity experience, and he is pursuing ethical hacking, cyber law, and cyber forensics. Ladies and gentlemen, a very unique qualification I would like to make a special mention about Vikram. He has made a product which was used by US President Bill Clinton, a very highly accomplished personality indeed. We also have from Blue Bricks, Ms. Upasana Tiwari, who's co-founder and head partnerships and customer engagement for Mrs. Blue Bricks Group of Companies. With me from CLO, I have Mr. Sanket Deshpande, our managing director. So we will now request Vikram to address us on today's topic of the webinar, which is Future of Security, EKYC, Adaptive, and Passwordless. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, I will now request Vikram to take over and address us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lalit. I think I'm a bit humbled by the kind words. Okay, let's dive into the future of security. I think parallelly, my team is just requesting for a short little poll, so just find some time to do that. I'm going to dive into the three key aspects which I think most of us have, or have been hearing or going through. These are the buzzwords that the market is talking about in cybersecurity: EKYC, adaptive authentication, and passwordless. So let's get into the agenda, which is going to be covering the FOMO and JOMO. So I'll talk about what are these terms and how it influences cybersecurity world. And then we are going to dive into how we can unify onboarding, especially from customers, in a large scale, which could be e-commerce or, a big retail bank or commerce, portals, and going towards how we can have higher security coming together. And then after that, we're going to get into looking at the different models of EKYC or digital KYC, and then what are the learnings and pitfalls that we have derived out of all the projects that we have done with the different clients that we have, especially in a BFSI sector. Then after that, we'll go towards passwordless, and from the history all the way to the options that are available. And then we lastly look at, if you are looking at reusing or reducing and reinventing your cybersecurity, what you should be considering, what should be the line of thought that you have to build into. So the focus of my, I think a couple of slides would be a little bit technical. I'll not try to go much deeper, but just touch upon different things, not conventionally what we hear, or you can Google it out, but look at some different aspects of these specific topics in terms of EKYC, passwordless, and adaptive. Now, after that, you can keep on posting your questions, and I think towards the end of it, we will take it on. So cybercrime is the third biggest economy. It is more than anything that is happening today, which is essentially better than drugs. If you're trading that, and in terms of cybercrime, by 2025, it will be $10.5 trillion industry. So why am I sharing this with you? Everybody wants to become a hacker. Everybody wants to steal. And this is the beautiful part of it, the motivation for the bad people to come and attack the good guys or good people like us. So FOMO and JOMO, fear of missing out. Social media is a very good example of us falling into the trap. And JOMO is joy of missing out, where you say that I do not want to do that. Now, how it applies to our world of cybersecurity is that every company, big or small, essentially is concerned and is in a fear of cybersecurity. So there's a whole set of companies who would say, oh, I have to upgrade my security. I have to do things under that. And there is allocation of budget or change in budget, even before and after COVID, that is coming over there. So almost 80% people or companies would like that. So that's the fear in general, that, hey, I need to have more security so that I can protect myself. But then on the other hand, when you really look at the numbers, 66% of companies, even knowing that they need to invest, they don't invest in cybersecurity. And they think that it will not happen to me. It will happen to somebody else, not me, And that is essentially the JOMO part, which is joy of missing out, which is more dangerous because you lose a lot. And that also gets reflected by what is coming under cyber insurance. Most of the companies are not taking that, and cyber security, investment is still very high, which is mostly done by the large enterprises, but smaller and medium-sized enterprises are not investing in this. And when you look at the claims, also email from ransomware is where the maximum cyber, insurance claims are coming in. So FOMO and JOMO, whichever way we look at it, there is a need for cybersecurity to be taken more seriously. Either you are at fear or you are, in the joy aspect. Now, the two disconnected elements, which is, has been there, even if you look at 3 or 5 years back, has been identity and authentication. So we have always kept these two things separate because that's how the world was. But when I think COVID hit in, everybody said, hey, we got to move towards digital. So let's take an example of EKYC onboarding. Now over here, Emmy wants to open a bank account with a cool bank. She kind of picks up the mobile app, she logs into a Facebook, then quickly, there's a data consent getting pulled in. Then she validates it, clicks a photo, as most of the EKYC is asking, then quickly does some kind of checking, and then there's an adaptive risk engine that runs in and onboards you. Now, this is good. This typically would cost, from $3 to $10. If we were doing the old way, using paper, using people, it would cost about $15 to $40. Going towards higher security, so that would be a different, paradigm where you would say, okay, I want to have Q&A, I want to have password, OTP, I want to give them token, hardware, smart card, things like that. And then I also want to do biometrics, facial, retina, voice, anything like that, which is knowledge, possession, or inheritance. And that gives us the multi-factor part to identify that, yes, this person is correct or not. Now, this typically, from provisioning and support will cost you around $8 to $20 per user per annum. Again, these two things are totally disconnected, but how about we combine them? How about we bring different applications which can leverage on the same set of EKYC details or user details which are being captured, but in a single process? Meaning you create the customer onboarding process, you do the verification, at the same time you do the enablement, you do the adaptive profiling, you pick up anything and everything that you need, from facial to voice to one-time password to what you have, all those kind of things, and then onboard them immediately. And the beautiful thing is you can share the same set of credentials across different applications. So if you're a client with a bank, you can have, retail, corporate banking, trading, all these different things using the same user as a single source of identity. So it cuts down a lot of effort. It cuts down the provisioning. It cuts down the cost almost to the half or more if you share it across the different applications. So why does this make sense? It makes sense because you are able to look at one-time KYC with unlimited authentication, authorization, and single sign-on. You are able to onboard the customer fully, but at the same time improve the security posture that you have, and also get into the competitiveness, with other competitions coming in by bringing everything as one platform, which is running with you at your end, giving you that. And one of the key points which I love is that because most of the clients we work with is that they have different islands. Each different application is using different, way of security or a security policy, IT security policy. So that islands get dissolved and you have a one big, I would say a continent where you have everything coming from there. So it kind of makes more sense where you have, transformation being happening and at the same time giving the data security plus the flow security. So bringing it together is, I think, the most fundamental thing that, one has to look into going forward, in terms of onboarding as well as strong security or higher security. The next part, which I would like to get into is the EKYC. Now, EKYC has many words, digital KYC, EKYC, video KYC, there's a whole, bunch of things that are being thrown across. So what we are going to look into is what are the 4 different models that are being followed internationally. So let me just spend, I think, about 30 seconds or 1 minute. So if you look at something which is more flexible, which is being followed in places like Australia and Malaysia, where it's flexible, it's up to the company how they want to onboard the customer. Then when we go towards the German model, or also very aggressively being promoted and used in India, which is a video call based verification, where the in-person is replaced with a video call, and that video call essentially gives you the ability to onboard the customers seamlessly. Then you go towards the third part, which is your federated identity. So again, I think, in the context of India, they have the video KYC as well as the central, I would say federated identity, which is Aadhaar card or PAN card, that's coming in together. So meaning you're leveraging on a centralized database of users for proof of identity as well as proof of address. Excellent way of doing it. Singapore also has that. Sweden also has that. But again, you need that control of the data, and make it available to all the different small companies or the small entities that can leverage on that. So it's a huge infrastructure, investment. And then lastly, which is a very interesting model that is in UK, where it's 2+2. meaning one bank can ask another bank, or one entity can ask another entity, hey, I need to know what is the name and the passport and the certain other credentials. Do you have this for this user? And then you leverage on that particular due diligence of the client from another entity and start off that. So this is something which is also coming in through open banking into the world, in the banking world, and it is coming more aggressively, as per se. So there is no right or wrong over here. It's essentially, what is the need and what the regulators are demanding, and based on that, you're building, different solutions or platforms around it. So I think one of the first things you have to do is that look at what is the model that fits me, what is the compliance that demands me to work towards it, and any solution that you're going to look at should be able to cater for for what you desire in terms of the different models. So this is what India is asking for. It's one of the most comprehensive way of I would say doing onboarding, which is German and Swedish model coming together, from onboarding to OCR to end-to-end encryption to handwritten to video call, to different ID documents. All these are being asked, along with redacting and OTP. So it's a very comprehensive way of onboarding the customers. Excellent example of how a regulator is pushing it forward and bringing real, no fraud kind of scenario in the EKYC part. If you look at Australia and Malaysia, it's a bit softer, it's a bit easy, where you can just show the document, possibly do a optionally video call, and then do a AML check, and then you are able to get it. How we can bring security or continuous security with EKYC. So essentially, you as an owner, you create the profile, then you go towards the different types of, I would say, elements that you need. So for example, OTP with handwritten, or you want to have a video call, which is live, and mental stability check, asking them to click a picture of their bank statement, of their ID proof, like passport, driving license, etc. Also getting their location and device, and also doing a $1 transaction into their previous bank account. And the beautiful thing is that the robot will be able to do a lot of manual work and automate it, from OCR extraction to biometrics, face matching to voice matching, to $1 transaction, mapping the OTP, doing the scoring, and then doing the call verification. And then lastly, passing it to the human operator, where the human operator can decide whether they want to, allow the person based on the score, or reject the person, or ask them some more information, or get them on a video call, and then post that, the person is onboarded with the multi-factor coming in. So again, a seamless way of getting customers onboarded. Now, why do you want to bring automation in EKYC? There are amazing benefits to that. I won't go into details, but if you look at from operations, productivity, and trailing, and also from customer screening as well as service point of view, there is a big gain that you can get out of it. And this is what this particular slide is depicting, on how you are able to build more automation and bring beautiful time saving and cost saving. Now, this specific slide showcases what all can be achieved in terms of automation in EKYC from an AI perspective, from artificial intelligence perspective. So if you really look at the list, from facial to voice, to handwritten consent, to document OCR, to liveliness check, whether it's a real person or a selfie or a fake video, to a document is real or fake, in terms of checking the borders, in terms of checking, if it's skewed or if it is being, photoshopped, then handwritten extraction, for future purposes, and then also contextual comparison between different documents, from your bank statement to your ID card to your, to your utility bill. And then lastly, also do video to audio conversion, and validate the data that is being spoken between the video person. That means the call that happened between the client as well as the the operator. So AI has helped you in huge chunk of automation, which in essence translates to a better or higher transparent yet secure way of onboarding the customers. So obviously you can have a cloud-based deployment. There are a couple of vendors who would do that. And there are a couple of vendors who would say, okay, we can give you on-prem deployment where you can have everything on-prem. Again, you need to look at what your regulators allow you to do. And based on that, you can make that decision whether you want to go with cloud or not. So a very simple example, scan the document, extract the OCR over here, do a face capture or a video capture, do the matching, and your account is opened up. A very, very basic structure. As any entity, you would have two options of giving out your EKYC with higher security. One would be self-service, where you are asking the customer to self-onboard themselves, and you would have a scoring system in the back. You would have, face matching, OCR, and many other things, as I explained you earlier, playing a role to score the person and onboard the person based on the score. It can handle high volume, high velocity, but it is likely to go or get abused, or it can be frauded, in my bit of broken English. The other is, which is agent-based or assisted, where the end user is engaging with the agent or the operator appointed by, let's say, for example, a bank or a telco. And they have a recorded video call. And then in that video call, many things like face matching, real time, like an AML check, all these things are being done. But at the end of the day, the decision is made by the agent or made by the operator. So disadvantage of this is that you have low volume, low velocity, and it is solid against fraud. So that is the value of going towards agent-based or assisted versus self. Again, it depends on what model would work. It could be or it could be and. You can roll out both these options by having a score over here and then saying, okay, if the score is too low, then we'll get into a video call. One very important aspect which I want to highlight that we have learned from our clients is called a re-EKYC, meaning we would like to have users who are old users who are using paper or onboarded, sometime back. They need to be moved into the digital world. So you can actually have the mobile app or your web app to let them go through that experience where they will be onboarded. So it obviously helps you in achieve compliance. It increases the competitiveness against others, and obviously gives you more data security because now everything is digitally being stored and archived. Learning from our clients, this is a very interesting slide. The more we do in EKYC, the more I would say time, cost, and money comes in. So time, effort, and money comes in. So let's say if you introduce a banking agent, suddenly your costs will shoot up, your effort will shoot up, and obviously time will get introduced. But if you're just doing external ID check, again the cost goes up. So what this slide depicts is that if you are trying to do a lot more with EKYC, there could be certain friction that will get generated, and that friction will lead to more cost, more time, and also losing the customers because we are asking them to do too much. So there's a very thin line or balance between what you want to achieve with EKYC and not have too much of friction being thrown at the customers or having in the process to take it ahead. So other things like geofence tagging, reports, and all these different kind of things are frictionless. They are operating quite well without introducing any hiccups or any, a customer fallout. So this is very, very important in terms of when you decide how you want to proceed with your, KYC plan. Then you need to look at where and how I'm going to reduce the friction or make it zero and take it ahead. And few other things which you also need to keep in mind are deepfake photographs, mule accounts. That means they're being compromised or intentionally being, used or abused. Handwritten, ID documents which are handwritten, so you can't really do OCR on them. Then compromised or cloned, SIM cards. This is one of the biggest threats that's happening globally, even in UK and in India, where hackers are cloning the SIM and then getting the one-time passwords and abusing them. Then they are looking at rogue agents. So if you have a inside rogue agent, then that could also lead to a problem. And then also looking at blacklisted companies and people internationally as well as nationally. So these are the few things that you have to look above and beyond what is happening in your EKYC plan or the project that you're taking on. Now let's look at the next important aspect, which is adaptive authentication. Now this picture depicts quite well that what you do and what you are, these are the most fundamental elements of how you build adaptive. So if you look at today's world, most of the applications would be using a password, and they would be going for a 2FA, I call it, a second factor, which is a SMS or a voice OTP. Some would have gone ahead, rolled out physical tokens and software tokens, OTP. But please mind you, OTP is also bypassable if you are doing a man-in-the-middle attack where these tokens also get bypassed. Obviously, there are superior ways of doing it, but all these which I'm sharing with you are visible. They are friction-based, meaning they need a step. That means the user has to do, and then based on that, the security works. So it adds bit of cost, adds bits of friction and latency in terms of how things get done. Now, invisible friction is, in very pure essence, it is looking at what the pattern of this particular user is, in terms of how you use the mouse, how you press the keys, how you touch the screen on your phone, or how you move your device, or how you hold your device, things like that. And then if you look at this, this is a genuine user. This is how their heat map pattern is, how they use the phone. Whereas a fraudster who has managed to get their OTP or managed to get their password, they are doing it a bit differently. So what's happening over here is that the system should be able to detect, hey, the credentials are right, the OTP and password is right, but there is a difference in the way the person is doing it. So what you do and what you are have changed. And because of that, the security should catch it and then take it ahead. So again, capturing all the activities, putting it under a behavioral or biometrics behavioral aspect, adding bit of cognitive analytics on top of that, using a machine learning algorithm, analyzing the insights on the behavior and taking it ahead. So a little bit micro, I won't go into it, but this is a very good example of how you can have adaptive authentication coming in, where you can have a frictionless experience for identifying the user and then taking it ahead. Now, why this is important? This is essentially the way forward towards zero trust security. Now, zero trust security is a total shift in paradigm where we say that we don't want to trust anything. Everything should be zero trust. Now, to achieve that, there is a stages. Now we are at a together collectively as a technology, we are at a stage where we can move towards adaptive, I would say, workforce, where adaptive authentication and authorization is coming in. So this step towards adaptive is not going to help us in just protecting the user, but it's also going to help us in protecting our network and also the whole architecture or the whole system that you have at your end, either on the cloud or on prem, doesn't matter, but it takes it ahead. Now, why adaptive makes sense? Firstly, because it reduces the friction. You can decide what you want, at what point do you want. It eliminates automated bots and man-in-the-middle attacks, extremely effective against that. It brings us closer to the zero trust philosophy, and it's a much faster authentication, and also it improves the customer experience because it's all happening in the background in an invisible way. Eventually, it does reduce the cost, and you only ask for absolute authentication or OTP or a facial when it's needed. So adaptive is one of the ways of going ahead, especially if you have large volume of customer base, then you should consider adaptive as a way of bringing your authentication and authorization into play. So going ahead, one of the, again, very key buzzwords is passwordless. And then if you look at today, 81% of breaches, happen because of stolen password or stolen credentials. So adaptive is one way of fixing it, and the other way is going towards passwordless. So a passwordless example would be very simple. You are, getting a push notification, on your phone, and then you're saying, okay, yes, whether I accept it or not. And over there, you're doing a facial or a touch ID, as a way of authenticating. Now, if you look at it, what does passwordless really mean? So we obviously know what is password, that is known to me. And then you have password plus second factor, which is your OTP or a shared secret, something like that. But passwordless comes under high security and convenience. Why? It's because it is based out of cryptography. It is based out of PKI, where there is a public-private key pair, and that public-private key pair gives us the ability to authenticate each other, the concept of mutual authentication, and then taking it ahead. So why is it relevant for us? Right? That's the question we have to ask. So if you go back 20 years, this is not a new concept. We all know that there used to be a PKI token. You would slot it into your USB, and then using that you will be authenticating yourself in a SSL VPN or into your internet banking for approving transactions. But what happened was that most of the browsers killed ActiveX, which was the Microsoft component, and then Applet, which was the Java component. Now, because they got killed, there was no way for all these different devices to work, which was PKCS 11 compliance. So then, after I think about almost for 5-7 years, what happened was YubiKey, which is one of the leaders, came out with a little hardware and forced or pushed themselves with a consortium of Microsoft, Google, and everybody to say, let's form a FIDO, which is Federated Identity, and come out with a web auth or web authentication, which is practically provided in all the phones as well as all the browsers of today, where this has become a standard of having the key pair based authentication to enable that. So that is essentially what today's world of passwordlessness is called. However, there is a very key difference. So some people would say, I am going passwordless. Some people would say, I am going passwordless MFA, passwordless multi-factor authentication. Now, in passwordless, you might, steal your, or somebody might, copy or replicate your, key pair. Very hard, but still possible. But in MFA, clubbed with passwordless, is where you're taking the best of two different worlds and bringing it together, where you have single, multiple factor from all these coming in. And then from these factors, you are able to build the passwordless experience. So it could be either adaptive absolute, hardware, software token, push notification, biometrics, facial, face or ID, and other things like location and all that. So that means you're not asking the user to remember a password or a secret, but you are asking for all these different things which come under multi-factor in a passwordless experience, and then take it ahead. So if you look at the comparison, it's tokens, PKI tokens, push, as well as out of band and biometrics. So somewhere or the other, nobody's a winner, but at the end of the day, we need to decide what fits the best to you, to your business need, and bring it out. From my personal experience, software is the way, because it gives high velocity, high volume rollout. And if you are clubbing it with multi-factor, which is geolocation, device, certificate, OTP, facial, all these different traits coming together, then you have a good solid way of bringing it together. And if you go with adaptive, that's the ultimate way. Now, this is coming from a lot of inputs from our clients, because we approach them saying, hey, you have employees, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 employees, and on the other side you have this 1 million or 2 million customer base, like especially with banking and financial institutes. So what this slide is showing is that when it's a closed group, meaning when it comes to employees, passwordless MFA is the way ahead. Why? Because it makes sense. Because you have closed group, you have a good rollout, you have control over security, your password reset is removed, everything is passwordless, amazing, fantastic. But when you go towards customers, customers react very differently. The end customers, your retail users, your people who have taken insurance from you, they are concerned about data privacy. They are concerned about third party. Let's say if you're using Okta or One Login and others, then you're looking at high cost, total cost of ownership. And lastly, you're also looking at the resistance for people to change, because they're still very familiar with password, still very familiar with OTP, and suddenly taking that away, builds fear in them, the FOMO component, right? So that is one of the tough spots to be in. So to address to that, you need to look at, can I introduce adaptive authentication with combination of password or OTP or MFA to bring the right passwordless kind of solution in place? So now I'm going towards the structure of where we have kind of discussed that EKYC, adaptive, as well as passwordless. So recycle, reuse, reinvent has to happen in cybersecurity because it is too messy. Everything is too much. Now, the first thing we need to know is that what are we protecting? So we are protecting data. At the end of the day, we worry about data breaches. Data is everything. We need to protect data. Second is we need to look at, or we need to protect whatever is touching those data. So your web applications, your IoTs, your OTs, your mobile apps, your endpoint servers, whatever you have, you need to protect that. And then lastly, you need to protect your reputation, because if you have a data breach, compliance or the regulators will come after you. If your reputation will go bad. So eventually what you're doing is you're protecting your data, the systems that are touching it, and at the end, your reputation. Now, any company would be something like this, where you have different applications and each application has a different requirement in terms of their frictionless authentication or EKYC or VPN requirement, or agent-based KYC with multi-factor authentication, data encryption, and things like that. So the importance of this slide is that whenever you're looking at any solution or architecting your onboarding as well as your authentication and authorization, it might change based on each application. And that is the crux of cybersecurity. I can have a house, I can put a lock on that. I can put few locks on that. But if I just buy the lock, it has no value because there's nothing to protect. And it will change with everything. So this is the most important part. Everything is similar, but they are not the same. So we cannot force the applications to behave in the same way, whereas they are different. Each one of them is different. So what are you looking at? Firstly, you're looking at the need of security, like what security really fits me. Second is you're looking at the user experience. Do I build too much friction? Do I build too much automation? Do I bring in the video calling feature? Then what is the cost implication for me? Is it a project which will actually generate revenue, or it will be a sunk cost? And what exactly will be taken if I look at tokens, hardware, software, whatever way? And then lastly, you look at the deployment. I'm going to have a cloud, on-prem, what kind of deployment I'm going to have, so that it's easy for my team to manage and run with. So when you're finding those answers, you will be stumbling upon many companies who are vendors, would say, okay, this is what I have, this is what the product I want to sell you. And you would be looking at partners who will say, okay, let's solve these problems, starting with the small ones, and progressively let's solve more complex problems over time. So you need to look at many questions that would come into your mind, and these questions should be able to help you to evaluate that, are you actually engaging with a partner, or are you engaging with a with a vendor? And that decision will help you to finalize what should be the way ahead for your cybersecurity. Now, at the end, I would like to say that it's a very profound statement. Cybersecurity is a fascinating discipline at the intersection of technology, policy, and business. And it is the vital discipline for fourth industrial revolution. So it gives you the competitive advantage. You and me are the part of the solution. It's a process which we have to follow. It is possible. We cannot, go into JOMO and close our eyes. And it is definitely a positive word in terms of, how we take it ahead. So with that, I would like to conclude my, inputs or my thoughts on these particular hot topics. And I will throw it back at my team, Lalit and Sana, if there are any questions that we can take them.
Thank you so much, Vikram. That was very informative. We do have a couple of questions come in. Centralizing and depending on one platform for security, is it not too risky?
No, not really. I think when you look at the cost component versus the security component, If you look at cost, you will drastically reduce the cost by consolidating all your applications. So like we have a bank which is using it with 9 different applications, from retail banking to corporate to VPN and everything. And their TCO has gone down a lot. On the other hand, if you're talking about reliability, that is the, I would say, the maturity of the enterprise product that you're using. So meaning that if you're taking a product, it should have features of load balancing, reliability, data replication, redundancy, high throughput, things like that. So my personal input would be that if you are consolidating, consolidate with a product that is able to give you different options for all the different needs that you have, different applications that you have. But at the same time, look at the feature set and look at the reliability and the scalability aspect of the product. But I 110% would vouch for that if you consolidate your security, it will help you to give a better TCO, better control, and better compliance. That is what we have seen and done with many of our clients. I hope it answers. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Vikram. There's another question. We are a medium-sized bank with about 1 million users in urban and rural India. Most users have smartphones. So what is the best passwordless option you suggest?
Okay, that's a good question. So if you are rolling out your own internet and mobile banking, then go for what we call it as embedded security. So you can have embedded, meaning that you have the SDK that is available, which will be put inside your internet banking and mobile banking, and that will be able to give you adaptive as well as absolute security. Otherwise, what you can do is that if you are using it as a separate security token, then go for push authentication or push token, where a push notification will come. Unlike SMS, it is free. It will have all the attributes of multi-factor coming in to do the security part. So one is embedded SDK, and the other is a standalone push token with MFA inbuilt to that. So these are the 2 options which I recommend. Especially if you have 1 million customers, go with the option number 1 of embedded SDK for adaptive as well as absolute security.
Thank you so much. I think there's a follow-up question on the first one. Can it create single point of dependency?
No. Okay. I think this is the first question that you have asked. See, if the application is using standards like OAuth, SAML for consolidating of applications, if the application or the system that you're talking about is using Radius, or if the if the algorithm for one-time password and all data encryption are standard like RSA, AES, then I feel that it is not binding it to you. If you take a solution which is proprietary, then you are obviously stuck with that. But if the solution is using open standards, then I think you're safe. You're not getting locked down. You are able to do that. So again, there is no right or wrong answer. But what I'm sharing with you is that from a balance between cost and security, consolidating under one platform makes more sense. And I think that's the way most of the enterprises and BFSI clients are going towards. So that's my personal experience also. And we have done ample projects just in this particular space. Yeah, and learn from them.
Thank you. Lots of questions for you, Vikram. There's one more. When an enterprise is looking for a security solution, are there certain certifications that the security solution provider must have?
Yeah. So I think just follow up to what I said earlier was that if the system itself is following the standard, if they are getting the product tested in terms of code review, as well as using stuff like HSM for key storage, using OAuth for scanning their web interface dashboards that they have, or mobile or web SDKs that they have, they should do that. Certain applications, if you're selling it to government, they should go through I would say their own vetting process. So like, for example, in Australia, common criteria level 3 is widely accepted. Same thing is accepted in US as well as in Europe. So that's a good I would say certification to go for. Again, if you look at something on the cloud, it might be a bit different because you're not hosting it on-prem. So if you're looking at that, that means you need to look at what does the cloud provider offering you as a base system in terms of data security and network security and things like that, and what exactly is your authentication system doing on top of it, and how they are storing the data. So if you're looking at on-prem, you can look at standards from RSA to OAuth, SAML, and things like that. Usage of HSM is a must, I feel. Able to store data in common databases like Oracle, or something simple like DB2 or MySQL. And on the other hand, if common criteria certification, if you are a government body or somebody sensitive, or if you need that. Otherwise, if you're looking at cloud, then look at the stack that the service is being exposed. So if you look at Okta or somebody like that, they would actually share what they have, and then if it fits into your requirement, then you can proceed. Yeah.
So can this solution be used for network admission control?
Yes. So things like RDP, SSH, which is remote desktop, virtual VPN access, or SSH, which is remote connection to the server, or if you're looking at web or mobile application, then using SOAP, not using SOAP, using SAML or OAuth SSO. So it is essentially, authentication comes when you're entering into the parameter, right? And authorization comes when somebody is approving a certain action. So if you're looking at network, there is certain elements, which is from VPN and all the way to the top, there is an authentication that can be offered. So a system should be able to handle this. Let's say if you're using VPN, it should be able to offer you radius. If you're using a web or mobile application, or it should be able to handle SOAP or SAML. If you're looking at RDP or a Windows login, then it should be able to give you security over there, with the right components being installed on those servers. So answer is yes, it should be able to provide you with the network level security also, or authentication also. Yeah, we have done a couple of projects on that using Radius. Yeah. Radius
what should I ask my software vendors if we want to have passwordless, adaptive, absolute authentication to be enabled? Is there a standard that we can follow?
Yes, I think the kind of question is coming back in the same. If you're looking at, saying, okay, I want to extend, my VPNs and my Wi-Fi routers, my network, then obviously you need to say, okay, hey, I need, your system should be able to offer me Radius client. If you're looking at web and mobile applications, then you should ask for SAML client, or you should ask for OAuth v2 client to be embedded inside. So why client? Because all these applications will become client to your authentication server. So meaning, if let's say, for example, there's a HR system and it has the SSO client, then your authentication system becomes SSO server, and they can talk to each other for the authentication. So one becomes the server, which is your authentication server, and your HR application becomes the client, and then talk. And same goes for VPN or Wi-Fi routers, or RDPs or VDIs, all these different access from outside. Yeah.
How does the 2+2 system work? How do we trust other agency data which is foolproof?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The philosophy of 2+2 comes because there is no centralized structure. So if you have a centralized structure, like something like in Sweden and India and in Singapore, you should be able to leverage that. But on the other hand, there has to be a strong legal structure or a framework between those participating companies that can share their data with the user's consent. A blockchain is one of the best ways to showcase something like this. Open banking is able to showcase this kind of collaboration between different larger and smaller banks and non-financial institutes, where they are coming together and sharing their data. And one of the data that they're sharing is also on the KYC. So the 2+2 fundamentally relies on the technology aspect, which is possibly your blockchain or something similar to that, which I think Oracle is also offering using Hyperledger, and IBM and all that. And on the other hand, it will be your, the structure, the legal framework under which all these companies will collaborate and share the data with users' consent. So that's the base fundamental of 2+2, to roll out, either technology-based or legal-based.
There's still more, Vikram.
Okay.
So Sana, I'm sorry to interrupt you. There was a question right at the beginning from Hang asking, how is the checking mechanism? Do you have that question in front of you?
Yes, I have it. So sorry, Hang.
That was right, actually, as
Yes,
soon as
I just
Vikram
saw it. Sorry, I've been
started off.
getting so many that I'm just scrolling down.
No problem. I'm here also monitoring it.
Thank you. How is the checking mechanism? Do you link with other authorities?
Yeah. Now, see, if you look at the model, if you have a centralized system, like Sweden, like in India, you are able to connect to those systems and validate the identity. But on the other hand, if you do not have it, let's say in Australia or in other places, we have done a couple of projects in ASEAN, like Malaysia, Cambodia, Laos, and other places. So what we have realized was that they don't have a central structure. So over there are certain companies, like LexisNexis, Namespace, MemberCheck. These are the companies, Equifax. So these are the companies who are providing you the AML and PIP check, which essentially makes sure that the customers whom you are signing up, they are not, under the preview of, or they are not under the AML anti-money laundering list, or they are not, politically exposed people. So those can be the extra checks that you can do to make sure that the person you are onboarding, either as a customer for retail or corporate or any kind of I would say business, to be validated before they go in. So one could be central, federated identity. Other could be these mega repositories of millions and millions of people whom these companies are offering as a way of validating under the AML and the PIP check. So this is how any product should be able to address or look at. Yeah.
Vikram, there's more. How does this work on an on-prem and cloud combo? In the sense, the enterprise is made up of certain components hosted on-prem and some components as subscription-based cloud solutions. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm assuming that the authentication server is going to be under your control, and you would have certain applications which are on the cloud, and there are certain applications which are on-prem. Regardless whether it is on the cloud, on-prem, the way it would get integrated would be using, SAML and OAuth, or what we call it a single sign-on, where whenever any authentication request comes in or user validation request comes in, any application, let it be on the cloud, let it be on-prem, will go to the authentication server. It will get validated over there using passwordless, adaptive, or simple OTP, whichever way. And then after validation, it will return it back to the calling application, which could be on the cloud or on-prem. So the beauty of this is that even though you have applications anywhere, the control or the authentication has to come to you under your control. And that is very, very important. I personally highly recommend that control the authentication and authorization. If you're able to do that, automatically a lot of your security problems get solved. And try to move away from passwords to multi-factor and passwordless and adaptive, because as soon as we do that, you will suddenly see all the hackers going away. They don't want to attack you because you're too difficult. They move on to the next target. They move on to the next fish, in the sea. So make it difficult and control your authentication. And that is the most, important aspect. So answer is yes, it is doable. It is doable using OAuth or SAML, single sign-on, as the way ahead. If your vendor does not have it, then they should be able to call APIs for doing the authentication. A less attractive way, but that is also possible. Either reverse proxy or some kind of way where still control comes back to you using a reverse proxy or using APIs. Yeah.
How much latency and bandwidth will the access be approximately using?
Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
A follow-up to a question before the on-prem one.
Yeah.
I think with the 2+2 system, How much
Okay.
latency and bandwidth?
Latency, okay, there are two parts to it. One is the actual connection between the three parties, which is the user, your application, and your authentication server. So that latency is less than a second or two. The majority of time goes into user doing the validation, which could be possibly using a push notification or entering a OTP or entering a adaptive authentication and all that. So the network latency or communication between these is about 2 seconds maximum. The human element would add another 30 seconds or 45 seconds in terms of the authentication part. Yeah. So that's the two part. One is the human part, which is the slow part, and one is obviously the ones and zeros, which is extremely fast. So the packet of OAuth and SAML are less than 1 KB. So in today's world, it's extremely fast to just exchange, that digitally signed encrypted payload between 3 different entities. Yeah.
Vikram, do we have time for one more?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
I
guess
am always
let's no. To be fair to Vikram, I think let's restrict that to the last question. This is my humble plea and request to all the attendees, though I really appreciate the level of interest that is being exhibited here and the kind of questions that are coming in. This is really wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last
So
question, Sana.
this is the last one. You mentioned adaptive authentication can also protect from dots and mule accounts.
Yeah.
What is the success rate from your experience?
Yes, that's a very relevant question. Success rate has been 99.9% plus, and I'll justify it. As soon as you bring in different layers of security, and especially when you bring in something like adaptive, adaptive is not looking at your password or your secret or your OTP, because that can be stolen or sniffed, but it is looking at who you are. So if you're looking at me, you know how Vikram looks like, right? Now imagine that my computer, my location, the way I type, the way I press the key, the way I hold the phone, the way I, do the pressing of, how I actually do my transaction, that is all being learned and analyzed by AI engine. And that engine is able to tell immediately whether, you are the same person or not. So if there's a mule account or if there's a compromised account, and the user who's entering into it, possibly a hacker, the way they would do it versus the original genuine, user will be different. And that difference at a very micro level gets caught, which tells you that this is not the right person, and you ask them for more authentication. And as soon as you ask them for more authentication, like a MFA or a push or, signature OTP, things like that, the hacker does not have that. So that is the way it protects you. So adaptive is extremely fine. That clubbed with absolute, which is a strong authentication, which is being promoted by adaptive, that makes it very, very powerful for hackers to bypass or crack in. So even if you have a rogue employee or even if you have a rogue user, it is not possible for adaptive to bypass it. So, and everything is getting audit trailed. So if a genuine user tries to do something wrong, that also gets very quickly prompted out. So we, like in our product XDM, we have something what we call it as smart alerts, that essentially tells you if there is a genuine user doing something fishy, and that quickly converts into a push saying, hey, are you doing this? And then the person is asked for, if it's a high value transaction, show your face, or swipe your finger, or pick a particular number, and then after that do that. So looks very unrealistic, looks very surreal, but 99.9% is what we have observed with the clients that we have worked with. Yeah, for adaptive coupled with absolute, both together, working and protecting. Yeah, I think, Sana, we have run out of time. So
all right. Oh yes. Well, I guess Vikram, we should have expected this. The kind of the discussion that actually took place. So anyway, thank you so much, Vikram and Upasana, being with us on this day for this webinar. I think I can really confidently on behalf of the attendees say that it was certainly very, very informative, very, very useful. And attendees, I really hope I resonate what I say here on your behalf. Okay, we really are thankful to all of you to have taken time off from your busy schedules to be with us on this webinar. Okay, and do trust that you found this very, very useful. Uh, uh, Something which we feel is very, very relevant to many of you, particularly those who represent the banking, finance, and insurance verticals, and even otherwise from other industry verticals as well. So, thanking you once again very much, all of you. A small announcement I would like to make is that there is a hitchhiker's guide to buying cybersecurity products, which we would be very happy to share with all the attendees who take the poll survey. That is, fill up the feedback of today's webinar. And needless to say, we will also share the recording of today's session with all of you. So, Upasana, if I may humbly request you that if you could have the survey come up, and we have the feedback, and all those who help us with the feedback get that report or the guide, if I may say so. And do reach out in case you should require any POCs, any demos from either the CLO team, that is myself or Sanket Deshpande, or Vikram Sareen and Upasana Tiwari from Bluebricks, our partners. So very happy to be of help, very happy to be of any assistance, any further questions, any demos, or any POCs. Do give us an opportunity to engage with you. I'm sure we can really be a very valuable, trusted partner to all of you in this journey here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As I end the webinar, the survey questions will come up on your screen. So please, I request you to fill them up, and that will give us some feedback. And we'll be sending you the Hitchhiker's Guide soon after. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Thank you, Vikram. Thanks, Lalit. Thank you, Sanket.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
you all of you very much.
Excellent question.
Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, Upasana. Thank you, all of you.